TGIF, happy Friday. So happy to have this time with you today. We are finishing out the week strong. We've had some amazing conversations this week. Yesterday with our teachers was really so much good information for whether you're homeschooling little ones or teenagers there and earlier. Just really great conversations, and we're ending it also on a high. I am so happy that we have Kay Du Fernandez with us. She is a YWCA board member. She's also a friend, and she is the Senior Vice President of Marketing at Konica Minolta, where she leads a team of over 100 staff in creating innovative marketing strategies and building awareness for Konica. She's also a mom of 3 daughters. She's got a full plate for sure, and we're so happy she could make some time to talk with us today. As you know, we created YWTV as an opportunity to stay connected with all of you during this time where we're together but living apart, and this was a wonderful opportunity to be bringing different conversations that were important to hear right now that are either inspiring or engaging or educational. And I know whether you're running a company as large as Kay's, or whether you're running a nonprofit like I am, or whether you're running a small business with a small team, it doesn't really matter. Switching to working in a remote capacity as a leader is, I think, a little bit different. So I thought it would be good to have a conversation with someone who actually does it a lot. And so we can get some tips on how to, strengthen our leadership capacity, and also, learn if there's anything that, Kay finds is different from, leading in the time of COVID versus normally leading remotely. So Kay, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Great to see you. It's so nice to be a part of this. So thank you.
Oh, we're so glad you could be here. As Kay knows, we've been trying to get her Kay's schedule is, because of her work, is so crazy, and we've been trying to get her to come speak at an event with us for some time. So, I guess we have to be grateful that we're all, in place for a little bit so we can grab some of her pearls of wisdom now, but we will definitely be pulling her into another opportunity down the road. But Kay, so tell us, you manage a very large team remotely all the time. You're not just doing that now. It's nothing that you kind of flipped into gear. How is that? What is that like as a leader?
Yeah, I think, so Konica Minolta is in Ramsey, New Jersey, and we've got 3 buildings there, a campus of about 600 to 700 people. And Rick Taylor's our president and CEO, and we actually probably went into remote work mode before Governor Murphy even mandated it. So we were pretty quick to react, and the executive team is really strong. We have daily communications meetings about, how the company, how other subsidiaries are sort of dealing with COVID-19 and this pandemic. So certainly having a strong support system and a peer group helps to lead, for me to lead my team. Certainly, when we first embarked on this journey, our whole purpose together was, figuring out how we're going to get through this, right? So, having that shared understanding that we're all in this together, we've got created this shared purpose in us, that we're on this common journey, and so created this connection for a lot of my team members. And I think, when you start acknowledging that we're all in this shared journey, you start to figure out like how people are dealing with it, right? So you take a moment, you talk through. I think in the beginning there was a lot of chaos, there was a lot of anxiety. We didn't know what was going to happen. Things were changing so very quickly. And so really just trying to understand how everyone on the team and each individual on the team was really doing, and finding, the people who are doing amazing, doing really well, and those who aren't coping as well. And, on my team in particular, we've had a few really strong leaders who have been incredibly agile, totally pivoted, and so amazing to just really see how they have just adjusted so well to change. And then, we have had some team members who have been struggling. I think of one in particular because she's been on the team for probably a little over a year, and she came in, was just embraced our culture, so amazing, would do every week, would have a coordinated breakfast or lunch, and just finding different ways, social ways to bring people together. And, she really had a hard time struggling, getting used to being in this confined work environment where she was such a social leader before. So, I think in those instances, that's where you just have to pick up the phone and have that personal conversation. How are you doing? What can I do to help? And really showing some empathy and putting yourselves in their shoes. So, I heard this the other day, eyes open, heart open. And I just love it because I think now, especially, having that personal connection at that level is what drives the purpose and passion behind every team.
Yes, and I've heard from a lot of people that the amount of email people are getting has exponentially increased, because it used to be if you were in the office, you could have a conversation with the person, walk by their office and talk to them about something. But now everybody really is reverting to email. How are you, and have you heard that from your team? How are people managing all that type of communication?
Yeah, well, we're lucky because Konica Minolta is we're in the business of remote work. So,
right.
We help businesses with collaboration software, unified communications. I actually heard a statistic that 7% of businesses were prepared for remote work pre-pandemic. And so we're really starting to see that because our all covered IT services division is super busy. So they're helping businesses sort of maneuver this. And you're absolutely right. More Zoom, more Google Meet, more email, it's very, very virtual right now. And our sales reps are having to really sell virtually, which is very, very different for them as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I know the Zoom meetings are through the roof, right? There's definitely a lot of platforms, that I think have kicked in. So those are the ones that you're using primarily, Zoom, and what was the other one? Google Meet. Is that what
Google
you said?
Meet. Yeah.
And that's what you find. Yeah, I'm always curious what folks are using. We had always used Zoom, as as a board member. We use it for board meetings. We always had. But, we had to employ, for example, for our counseling sessions at Healing Space, our sexual violence program, as you know, we had to find a HIPAA compliant version of Zoom so that they could do their counseling sessions on Zoom. So it's been interesting. It's put us all on little journeys, depending on our areas of focus, right, to find the tools to do it. So as you found that some leaders really took to it, and other leaders you kind of had to cheer them along, right? We're kind of going into what week are we in now?
8 now.
Yeah. We're heavily into week 8. Do you see the challenges of leading during this time have kind of changing and evolving over these weeks, or do you feel like they're settling because they're getting into a rhythm of it?
Yeah, so I'm the executive sponsor for Step Forward, which is a women's leadership program. We meet once a month, and we've had 2 meetings since this whole thing, started. And the first meeting, we had this amazing speaker, super interactive. He had everyone sort of in the chat put, what they were feeling. And certainly there was a lot of anxious, worried. And I myself didn't realize, how prevalent that was. And then we just had another meeting where we had a speaker yesterday. And, the sentiment, I feel people are sort of getting settled into, creating this regular routine. I think one of the things to really help with working in this type of environment is to establish a routine for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like getting up in the morning, I get dressed, I put my makeup on, business up top, and,
Yeah.
loungewear, loungewear below. So really having that routine is super important to be able to, if you can't control your environment, it helps you to control yourself at least.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other big takeaway I took from the meeting was essentially to meditate every few days. I'll sit, take some deep breaths, and try to get more oxygen in my brain, and just to really take care of yourself, because unless you are peaceful and grounded, it's really hard to lead others and be a good leader if you're not yourself in that mode.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's great advice. You have to, before you can tell others to use these techniques, you really have to, master them for sure. So, one thing that kind of comes to mind is that, very often I think when we're, leading in a, remote way, it might be normally versus the way it is now. All of your employees are now, it's not that they're working from home, but they're suddenly working from home with everyone else in their house being home too. Right. And also there's stuff happening at home. They might be homeschooling. They may be suddenly have moved a older family member in to be able to care for them so that they weren't on their own. All kinds of, and then, or they may be getting a grocery delivery in the middle of the day because that's when the only time it'll show up and you have to take it when it comes. Have you as a leader, and you in terms of leading your teams, had to kind of address all that happening for all of your employees? Because that's a little bit different than, normal, correct?
Definitely. I mean, you're sort of home. You can't just be away from it all, and everything that happens, sort of impacts you. I have 3 teenage daughters, like you mentioned, and I also have 2 French bulldogs, one of which is a puppy, and probably more work than all 3 of my combined. But in our Zoom calls, you'll hear sort of the toddlers running around, the doorbell will ring, the dog will bark, so definitely that's happening. And I think, at that point, you just sort of embrace it. You're like, okay, we're sort of all dealing with this. My husband will walk past my Zoom calls, and sometimes if he knows who's, on the other side of the computer, he'll stop in and say hi, and so I think, the better we embrace it and the more comfortable we are as leaders, it makes it easier for, our teams to also get comfortable with the idea.
Yeah. And right on cue, one of my kids is showing up right as we're talking. Yeah, I think that is definitely one of the things that we have to. Julia, they're up there. Sorry, my daughter's looking for her baby dolls.
That's okay. I actually sent a text to my entire family and said, I'm on this call from 11 o'clock on. Please don't come downstairs.
I know. I try to hide, and usually it works, but on occasion. So when it comes to kind of some of the other challenges of managing, like with the technology pieces. So I guess as your company is, you're pretty evolved, so everyone is pretty well equipped, technology wise. Have you had any of that, that staff, when they've gotten home, have had any technological challenges that have impacted the ability to get work done?
Not so much on the technology side. We do this, so that's been very, it's been a pretty easy transition for us. I just commend you. I think the families with younger kids, I mean, I don't know how you do it, because it is like, I was talking to a project manager on our team, and she has 4 children, and her youngest is a kindergartner, and just the homeschooling bit of it, right? She's got to help him get online, log into the site, and it's only like the curriculum or the remote school is like 15 to 20 minutes, right? So definitely, you guys are burning the midnight oil and a lot of hours in with the younger kids. Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, it's definitely it's definitely a challenge. I'd say we're learning, and we actually had these these teachers on yesterday giving homeschooling tips pro. So anyone watching who needs that, I would go watch that episode because they were great with talking about the younger set and then the teens. But it definitely is hard if you have a job that is very focused that something has to happen during a certain time, and at the same time is when they have to be online doing their work, because obviously with the younger kids they need a lot more direction for sure. But that is, I would say, one of the challenges. But um, I think for me, and I'm curious how you handle it, because I know you work in a company that's international, so you're used to probably working different hours of the day. But for leaders that suddenly are, home doing this, how do you create a work day so that it's not bleeding into every hour of your day and all weekend long? Because I think, sometimes when you go to the office, you can leave certain things there and then go home and be a little bit more focused. But now that your home is your office and, you have to move, things around, shift things around a little bit. I know I sometimes finding it challenging putting that boundary in place. Curious what some of your tricks and thoughts are.
Well, I don't know if I have any tricks, but I think work progressively has gotten more remote. We're just forced into it right now, right, with the pandemic. So I think with, our smartphones and laptops, already we were very much, you just work when you can. And we have this mantra that we say, work is not where you are, work is what you get done. So regardless of what time it is, sometimes I'll get on global calls at like 2 a.m. Certainly 7 a.m. is it's a good time for Japan and Europe and New York here, our area, to find a common time to meet. But, you just sort of kind of roll with it, I guess. And you figure out how to change your day accordingly, right? Like if you've got some time in the afternoon, knowing that you've got another call late in the evening, or you've got to work on, a big presentation in the evening. I mean, I think we're just so much more flexible with, with work, just because everything is so digitally enabled right now.
Yeah. Well, another question that kind of came to mind for me is, so I love what you just said about work is what you do, what you get done, because I think that definitely is a shift. I can see with our team as well, is that, because you have all these other things happening in your house, you don't have to feel that everyone has to be doing from point A to point B, as long as the work is getting done. But what if you have an employee that you really aren't hearing much from, and you're not really seeing a lot of productivity from? What are some of your tips to manage that in this type of remote environment? I know when we're in the office, it's easy to kind of say, hey, come on in, let's go over let's check in and what's going on.
Yeah, well, what's interesting. So, I mean, I think same approach though, like get on a Zoom call, sort of talk through it, understand some of the challenges that they're going through. But what I was going to say is we're a print company. Traditionally, we do office equipment, MFPs, and we are right now very much trying to figure out what's going to happen to output. Like we've heard, output declines from 30% to 65%. The analysts are all over the board on how much print's going to decline in 2020 because people aren't back in the office. They're not printing as much. And, we can see it when we're in this remote work environment, because you would just sort of throw up a spreadsheet or throw up your presentation materials right on Zoom. And so having that access is going to be a real challenge for us. And then when you think about how people are working these days, it's going to be interesting to see how behavior will continue to change even when we are back in the office, and how, we may continue to be on Zoom regardless of whether or not we're physically in the office or not. So it'll be different.
Yeah, it is curious to see what the lasting effects of all this will be, right? I mean, I know I've seen a couple of great articles. We've shared them around with our team from like the Harvard Business Review or places where they talked about, and we actually talked about it on our corporate conversation last week with Denisa and with Joanne about, what are some of the, and those were companies that maybe moved to remote because of this, like they weren't necessarily quite as hooked up. But what of the changes of this time will remain with us? What are things that we did differently that we're like, hey, why didn't we think of this before? What efficiencies would come? So it sounds like you think the Zooms, keeping some of the video chatting and, giving that flexibility might be one of them, is what it sounds like. What else do you think might be a permanent fixture from the time of COVID?
I don't know. I just found it really, really nice to take a breath and sort of reconnect with family, and having everyone initially confined, but now we're all sort of very used to, all being around all the time. I have a senior, so part of me is heartbroken because she's missed out on prom. They're trying to still figure out what we're going to do with graduation. But, sort of selfishly, my silver lining is that she's been home and I get to spend more time with her before she goes to college. So that's been really, really nice, and sort of really seeing, the siblings become friends. So that's really, that's been heartwarming.
So, as a leader, what's a kind of some last thoughts maybe on that you share with our viewers that are out there that are flipped into this new space and, trying to be their best selves?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just goes back to, being grounded yourself, and just ensuring that, when taking that pause and not acting out when you're emotional or stressed. And this, could be said in any situation, right? Whether we're in a pandemic or not, but certainly more so now because there's this heightened level of anxiety. But, the more we're able to take a step back, I think as women, we tend to feel like we need to do everything. And we have a list of things to get done and cross off. And, it's kind of okay if we don't do everything on that list and take a moment to, take care of ourselves, find out how our friends, family, others are doing on our team, in our lives.
Yeah.
And just, take that time, because if we're not grounded ourselves, you can't be your best self if you're not, and lead others, without being comfortable and peaceful.
For sure. That's great advice. So switching gears to some, working mom questions, I guess, maybe just leave with, obviously it's Mother's Day this weekend. Shout out to all the moms. And question about, how are you and your family finding ways to have celebrations in the midst of this time, like Mother's Day? What are some of the ways that you're, celebrating and honoring some of these birthdays, quarantine birthdays? I mean, it's interesting to see all this, so much time has passed. We may not have thought all these things were going to come now, but they are.
Yeah. Well, I've personally done 2 adult birthday parades, and my friend Laura just chatted, and her daughter turned 16 just a few weeks ago. So my daughter, the kids arranged a whole birthday parade for her. So that was really sweet. I'm excited to see what they have in store for Mother's Day. I have no idea. So yeah, we'll see. We've done a lot of dinners. I made the kids play Scrabble, which they vehemently opposed and to, but then had a great time, shockingly. But I think it's nice to get together, and family games, puzzles, all of that, has been a blessing.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that it's been interesting because you kind of are limited. What are the things that you can do? You start making suggestions to the kids, and then they're like, no, we don't want to do that. But, as long as someone coax them into it, suddenly it's true. You found like a whole new activity that everybody loves.
Right. Yeah. My girls love Monopoly. I had no idea.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, board games, I would say, family movie nights, board games, all these activities, cooking together, baking,
Yes.
all of these have definitely been, I think, nice activities for folks to come together. Well,
Yeah.
Kay, I thank you so much for sharing some of your insights with us. As we can tell from all the comments, they really resonated with everybody too. Everyone, was really appreciating the conversation. You know, um, it's wonderful to have such strong female role models in corporate America like you. I know that in your company, you really, have created a standard for women leaders, and in the whole community, have also set the pace. So it's been wonderful to hear your thoughts and help the rest of us manage our brain space a little bit with some of them too. Um, and we're always grateful that you're such a great board member and part of supporting the YW team.
Well, thank you.
Anything
You're
you'd
an
like to
inspiration
share?
to me. No, I was
Yeah.
just going to say you're an inspiration to me and doing such hard work out there with everything that's going on in the community. And so, thank you for also being such a huge advocate for women.
Oh, well, as we have an amazing team at the YW. I have to say, like your team that you referenced, I mean, everyone really, hit the ground and pivoted quickly and did what we needed to do so that we could be responsive for our community. And, so grateful that our board as well, just stepped in place and provided the support. So we're very lucky for sure. And so for everybody watching, we're so glad that you could take some time with us today and get to hear Kay. And as I shared, I do hope that we can get Kay to join us again if we can, once she gets back to her traveling schedule, which she
Who
has.
knows when that will be?
Exactly. That's usually the reason, not that we can't, keep her focused to get her to speak at an event. But, since we are using all these platforms, they may become permanent going forward. So it doesn't matter where you are. Maybe we can still snag you for another conversation. But we are so grateful for you to be with us. We're so grateful for all of you watching YWTV and all of our different episodes. We have a great lineup again next week. We look forward to you joining us. We have learning about how to make your website stronger if you're a small business, learning about how to keep your kids safe online right now, as they're home and probably on devices way more than we're used to them being on, and lots of other great talks too. So we hope that you stay tuned, stay connected to the YW versus our social media, subscribe to our mailing lists, and get the blasts and notifications of what's coming. And we wish you all, anyone who is celebrating Mother's Day, whether you're celebrating for your mom or you're a mom yourself, we appreciate you and thank you. Enjoy the celebrations, however they end up playing out. And, we hope that the weekend provides hopefully days that feel a little bit different and are a little bit disconnected from work and school, and that you can focus on some of the great self-care tips that Kay gave us, and centering yourself. And we have some great YWTV episodes on yoga and mindfulness also, if you need some help on some of those techniques also. So everyone, have a great weekend. Thanks for spending this time with us. Kay, thank you for spending the time with us as well. And everyone, be well, and we will see you soon. Bye.